I am Brad Keeler. He is Jonathan Hubler. Coming up next on Director's Cut, you're going to hear about his greatest summer vacation mishap. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Director's Cut. My name is Brad Keeler. I'm the director of the Geo Institute, and that is why we call this show Director's Cut every single week. But this week, 4 times, 4 in 4 days, because it is our, I don't even know how many annual Director's Cut Labor Day extravaganza. You meet 4 GI members for Labor Day week as we get back into the swing of doing these shows. If you don't know anything about the Geo Institute, after you watch this here interview today, head over to geoinstitute.org. Click around, do some stuff, maybe watch some videos there, and you will find out all kinds of things, including that we are a technical society with about 12,000 members, most of whom are geotechnical engineers and or geologists, and that we are part of the American Society of Civil Engineers. And if you like what you see today, and I mean, we went over the questions, I feel like that's a foolproof equation. You should click like, subscribe, and get notifications, and we will let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel. It is, of course, Friday. This is our 4th episode in 4 days of our Labor Day extravaganza. And so to close out the week from Villanova University, where he is a faculty member technically it's in Villanova, Pennsylvania, is it not? Jonathan
Right.
Hubler. Jonathan, thank you for doing this.
Thanks, Brad, for having me. I'm excited to be here and answer some of these fun questions you got lined up.
Well, you're going to answer them all, actually. So we've got 10, the same way that we do every week. 2 of them are always the same. We, as is custom, we start with one of those that we ask everybody. So, Jonathan, describe your job in 45 seconds.
So I have the awesome job of being a faculty member in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Villanova University. Which means I get to teach courses in geotechnical engineering at the undergrad and grad level, advise undergrad and grad students, serve on different committees at the university and department level, and also work on research that I find exciting and hopefully has an impact on others.
So you have been teaching now enough years that you probably are not doing everything for the first time when you assemble your class notes and think about the supplemental materials you want to use and stuff like that. How hard was it for you to get to that point? Was the first year unbelievably tough and then the difficulty curve went steeply down?
I think I spent a lot more time developing the materials early on. I had a lot of good mentors and colleagues that provided materials, which was certainly really helpful. But I think, until you go through and teach something, you really learn it, I suppose, when you teach it. And so there's definitely a learning curve and just understanding like where students might struggle. And so that's really helpful. Once you got a couple years of teaching under your belt, you kind of know, okay, I know this topic is something students struggle with, and I can kind of plan now ahead, and I maybe anticipate some of those questions and things like that. So certainly, yes, more time was spent on the teaching early on.
Perfect. I'm glad it's getting easier. That's the right answer. I always say there are no right answers on Director's Cut, but that was the right answer.
Yeah.
So we have to dig right into the fun questions. This is what the people want to hear. And, sometimes on Director's Cut, everything just comes together. I throw a question in here and it's innocuous. And then the person says, it's like you knew. And so this is the one we teased right at the beginning. We're going to get right to it. Jonathan, it's the tail end of the summer. Labor Day has just passed for our viewers who are watching this. Have you had a spectacular summer vacation mishap?
as you said, I think you had good timing on this one. So yes, just a few weeks ago, my family planned a trip where we rented a house, and it had a nice pool. And the reason that we kind of rented it was we were interested, to swim in the pool, and that was the main selling point. And the photos and everything looked great online. And then we arrived at the house, and there was a lot of green things growing on the bottom of the pool, and it just totally ruined the vibe, and no one wanted to swim in the pool. And so I had never done this, but we just said, all right, yeah, we're just going to switch. We're going to go somewhere else. And so we pivoted, found a new place, and everything ended up working out great. But it was yeah, certainly a mishap.
Wow. So you did that on the fly, and you were able to find some place to go and everything?
Yeah. So it was a couple hours away, and so we kind of just started searching and found something kind of on the way home almost. And we took another leap of faith, hoping that the next place's pool was properly stabilized. And yeah, it worked out. But yeah, certainly it turned something that was maybe not so good, it ended up being good.
I'm really impressed that you did that, because I think I'm the type of person, and my wife is too. And so for this reason, it's horrible that we're together in this situation. We would have tried to fix that situation, and we would not have rested until we did. Like until someone was held accountable for the disgusting pool, or some remediation action was taken. How long did it take you guys to make that call that was not going to happen and you just had to bail?
Yeah, so we didn't totally, so we stayed one night, and we didn't actually totally look at the pool right when we got there, and we got there kind of late, so we stayed the night, and the next day we kind of went out and looked at it, and then that was, yeah. And I was just like, I don't think anyone's having fun anymore, and vacation's supposed to be fun, so I think we gotta cut our losses here.
So
and it was
for
also
our
when
viewers,
it was 100 degrees out then too, right? So it was
yeah, you need the pool.
it was needed. And so yeah, it was weird. I had never done that. I had never just said, all right,
So I guess
we're done.
if the viewers take away one thing from this episode of Director's Cut, I guess look at the pool right when you get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Check the pool first, then the house.
I love that. We're going to talk about water some more now. We were talking before we recorded. You're from South Jersey, right near where my wife grew up, actually. And shout out Joe Wortman, who also grew up right around the corner in South Jersey. You went to the beach a lot, as do many people, and they will call it the shore. The shore. I can't do quite the accent,
the shore,
but I'm
down the shore.
very nice. Recently, though, in the last couple of years, you've been doing more and more work in coastal geotech. And the third question is always the research question on Director's Cut. And so we had to go there. Can you talk about some of the coastal work that you've been doing recently?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. All right, so I don't want to derail this question, but first, since you brought up Joe Wortman, I'll throw this out there. Joe Wortman and I went to the same elementary school. So little fact there for you. So yeah, same
Excellent.
town. Yeah. But yeah, going into the research side, I grew up in South Jersey and going to the beach all the time and being out on the water and surfing and stuff like that. And my research during graduate school mostly focused on earthquakes and geotechnical earthquake engineering. And so I still do research in that area, but I have joined some teams and gotten involved in some work using some of the tools that I had previously used in the earthquake realm to study some of the soil properties, geotechnical properties of beach sands and wetlands and things like that. And it's been really refreshing. And a day of fieldwork at the beach is not a bad place to be. There is no shade, but it's nice to do some DCP testing or shear wave velocity measurements while looking out at the ocean. And so yeah, my research has kind of been going a lot more in that direction, and I've been interested in kind of looking at how some of the tides and storms and water flow has affected the soil properties and the strength of some of those materials.
So as you made that shift and got more into, we'll just call it the coastal stuff, I guess, is there anything that's really surprised you about it? I mean, I think doing research in that environment, it's just different, right? You run in the little kind of nagging hazards that you deal with. Stuff can fall off the boat, for example. That's not going to happen when you're inland.
Right.
What's been the most surprising thing to you about it?
I think a couple of things, actually, but I mean, there's a lot that still is, I suppose, unanswered. And there's a lot of models for this is how the coastline erodes, and this is how erosion's occurring, and this is how we're modeling sediment transport. And there's not much geotechnical information actually used in those models. And so, I think there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of data to be collected. There's a lot of modeling to be done that uses that data. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And I also think, when you're sitting on the beach and just enjoying the beach, I have been to the beach many, many times, and you know that it's a dynamic environment, meaning the sand's moving around, but it moves around a lot more than I thought. And so it's really, it's changing. Sometimes we'll be out in the field for a week and it'll move by a couple of feet. And so it's quite surprising, I suppose, when I got to that stage.
That's awesome. So we're going to, in a minute, we'll talk about something completely different that you did with gear that doesn't have anything to do with coasts at all. My daughter is about to get her learner's permit. We were talking the other day about customized license plates, which is the least of my worries as we move into this phase of her life. But it led me to ask this question, and you are the lucky soul that gets this, Jonathan. If you ever got a customized license plate, what would it say?
Yeah, this is a fun one. I should first say I don't think I will ever get a customized license plate. But having said that, the one that I came up with, I think pays homage to my Philly roots and my Philly accent, and so I would get Wooder. WOODER as my license plate.
I do like that, and it's meaningful. For those who don't know, Virginia, the state of my residence, has more customized license plates than any other state in the country, and it's a ridiculous amount. I think 1 in 5 license plates here is customized.
Wow.
And so many of them you look at and they are just so stupid. You think the person was at the DMV that day and made that decision based on how they were feeling at that exact moment.
Yeah.
And it's not representative of anything else in their life. I don't know if this is where you're coming from on this one. I am so terrified that I would make a decision like that. I almost put a customized license plate on the same level as a tattoo, in terms of regret. What do you think about that?
Yeah, although I guess you could easily just get rid of it, right? It's a little easier to get rid of than a tattoo. I think.
I don't know. I just feel like you've committed to that. You would put it on your car.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think I think that's probably true.
I love Wooder though, and there are so many. Do you enjoy Wooder Ice?
Yep, Wooder Ice. It's great.
Which is something you have to explain to people, right? Because the name itself makes absolutely no sense. And then they go to Rita's and they see the light, maybe. But so we're going to talk about some inland research now too. And it's been a little while since we've made a plug for GEAR. For those who don't know what GEAR is, it stands for Geotechnical Extreme Events Reconnaissance, NSF funded program where geotechnical engineers just like Jonathan go out in the field and do reconnaissance work after disasters. You got to go on a GEAR reconnaissance trip to one of the coolest places in the world. I mean, they all kind of go to cool places. This one I thought was pretty unique. You got to do it at Yellowstone. Can you talk a little bit about the disaster, about the work itself, and then what your experience was like there?
Yeah. So I had never been to Yellowstone prior. But yeah, there was, a significant rainfall coupled with they had, a lot of snow melt that year in the mountains, and kind of just the perfect storm of things going on. And so yeah, there's just a lot of water, and when water gets moving, it's really powerful. And then to kind of see that firsthand, and the amount of erosion that occurs. Or houses falling into the river. It's sobering and quite a lot to take in. Yeah, so in terms of kind of what we did there, I happened to be in Utah at the time at a EERI conference, and so we were, I was able to actually drive up from Utah with, I drove a rental car, and there was a team from BYU as well. But yeah, so we were able to not necessarily go too much into the park because a lot of the roads were all washed out and everything, but we did a lot of damage assessment and really, seek to, collect that perishable data of, what had moved around, what performed maybe poorly, what performed well. There was a couple of bridges that washed out, and so we were focused a lot on how did the bridges behave, with scour and things like that. And we actually then used that first trip as a kind of first phase, and then we actually went back a couple months later and took a lot of research instrumentation and studied a couple of the sites that were particularly, we thought, interesting from a perspective of what we can learn that happened.
So as an East Coaster, I mean, how dramatic was that for you? Because, I grew up in the thumb of Michigan. It's pretty rural. And then I've lived in Virginia. I went to college in Philadelphia. I thought Michigan, not that it was desolate, but there's a lot of empty space. Then you go out west. I mean, even that drive from, if you were in Salt Lake or anywhere in Utah up to Yellowstone, what was that like? I mean, and you talked a little bit about the human element right at the beginning when you talked about the houses that were falling off the cliffs because of the flooding and stuff. I mean, it totally changes things when you think of how that would impact an urban area versus someplace like that, where it might be hours to any services at all. So what was that aspect of the trip like for you?
Yeah, again, it's funny you should ask that. I do have a experience with the drive there. So yeah, I drove up in the rental car from Salt Lake, and it's quite a long drive, I forget, but we left in the afternoon, and so we were getting there, I think, close to midnight. And there was a van of students and faculty from BYU, and so we were kind of driving up together. And at one point we got separated, and we later found out it's because I was using Google Maps versus Apple Maps, and didn't really realize it anyway. So I'm driving along, and I realized they weren't behind me anymore, and So I called them and then I said, all right, well, I'll just keep going. I'm sure we'll meet up soon. But I guess it was a couple of many hours before we met up again soon. But I was essentially driving in the pitch black of Yellowstone Park. And it's like you said, so different from the East Coast. I lost cell service, so I did not have GPS. And so I just said, all right, I hope that this road continues to take me where I need to go. Really dark and past a couple of cars in a few hours. And so mostly what I saw was just the eyes of animals on the side of the road staring at me. So my heart rate was super elevated. I was like, just get me back to where I see lights and people and cars. And so that was that. Yeah, it's so different. I mean, just the amount of stars you can see at night too. Yeah. It's pretty incredible. But yeah, I'm very much used to seeing a lot of people and cars and lights.
And so, you get people who will say things like the distance between, or the drive between Denver and Salt Lake is not far or not bad. And I'm like, it's the same distance from like Washington, D.C. to Toronto. I'm like, that is far. That is really far.
Yeah.
Man. So that was good. I like that a lot. So the other question we ask everybody when they come on the show is about your ASCE and GI history. How did you first get involved with ASCE and then with GI?
Yeah, I think probably very similar to a lot of answers on this one. As a student, got involved with the ASCE student chapter when I was an undergrad. And then as a grad student, at Michigan, we had a GI student chapter and got involved in that. And then I think I attended my first GEO Congress was Atlanta. I think that was 2014. Mm-hmm. And so that was the first one I went to as a grad student. And then, throughout the years, continuing there, going to those. And then since I've been involved in technical committees and conference session sharing, and at the local level, the DVGI chapter, I've go to those meetings, and we have a student night every year at Villanova that I help to organize for the DVGI the DVGI chapter, and we have student presentations and scholarships for students that night, so it's always a nice event.
So we do hear from some academics sometimes, I don't go to my local chapter events because there's nothing in it for me. It's all about the practitioners. Jonathan, why should the academics go and get involved with their local GI chapter?
I mean, if you're doing research, you got to talk to the practitioners, right? I think knowing people that are local to me has helped a lot just from the perspective of research questions, I might call them up, data that I can use in class. Also then bridging those relationships to have students that are then going out to do internships or getting full-time positions at those companies. So yeah, I think I mean, I like meeting people and, building those relationships. And so I think that those meetings are great for that because there's a lot of local people doing a lot of great work.
We're going to completely change directions as we often do on the show.
Sounds good.
And we've got a good one here. Recently, we were doing some work on my daughter's room, and we were sanding, and I had the horrible occasion to have to wear a mask and safety glasses. And it had been a while since I had really had a mask on, a few years since COVID. And surprisingly, the mask didn't really bother me that much. And I actually forgot some of the things that I liked about wearing a mask, where you could make whatever facial expression you want and nobody can see you, for example. I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I hate safety glasses. I cannot stand them. I never get it right. They fog up, they fall off, they get in the way. Like, I just can't get it right. No matter, I've tried a gazillion different pairs, it doesn't matter. Jonathan, what piece of PPE drives you absolutely insane?
You took my answer. The goggle mask combo and just constantly fogging up is not great. But I'll also give another one. So we got some other stuff here. Maybe not necessarily like PPE, but doing field work at the beach, right, where you don't have shade. You tend to try and cover every inch of your body so you're not just sunburned to the end of the day. And so it's very different to like do field work at the beach because you're wearing long sleeves and a hood and a hat, and so you have very little amount of skin showing. And then sometimes I just kind of get tired of being almost bundled up. And yeah.
The good thing is you're usually not at beaches that there are too many beach goers at, correct? So it's not like you're that freak show out there.
Well, actually, we just did some work in Florida, and we were at a state park, and so yeah, it's or actually maybe yeah, national or park of but yeah, there was people there surfing, swimming, fishing, so.
You're never tempted to go freak them out, tell them you're doing a water quality analysis, and you might not want to go in there.
They always have lots of questions. Yeah. What are you guys doing? So yeah, we're happy to fill them in on what's going on and the value of what we're doing.
So a question that I started with when I wrote yours, because this is mandatory, I think, for anybody that went to Drexel or anybody who's even from the Philadelphia area. Doesn't matter if you're young, old, in between, whatever, Bob Kerner probably touched your life in some way. And so, Jonathan, do you have a favorite Bob Kerner story?
Yeah, so being a Drexel grad, obviously you hear the name Bob Kerner all the time, and so I have a couple of stories. Unfortunately, I never actually got to meet Bob Kerner. I taught geosynthetics at the graduate level at my very first class, very first semester at Villanova, and I had him scheduled to actually come and give a guest lecture during that first semester, and I thought, this is great. I'm new, but I'm bringing in the author of the textbook, so this will be great. And unfortunately, Bob had gotten sick and couldn't make it that night, and so I never got to meet him in person. But we had conversed via email, and I could just tell he was super enthusiastic. Even over email, about what he was going to present and how it was going to be great. And he had a great case history he was going to talk about. So, yeah, that's some of my interactions with him. But I think what's even like more telling is I did a couple of co-op jobs. Drexel's a co-op school. And so I worked for a couple of different companies and agencies in Philadelphia while I was a student. And so many geotechnical engineers in the Philly area, went to Drexel, and all of them talk about Bob Kerner and how, oh yeah, he's the reason I ended up in geotech, or he was my advisor, or I did research with him, or anything like that. So I've heard, just wonderful, glowing things from so many people, just over the years.
Perfect. And I think, yeah, it would be hard to be in that part of the world and be in geotech and not be touched in some way by Bob Kerner. We have another NSF related question. I didn't even realize that I put two in here. And this is research experiences for undergraduates, which is a program that you got to take part in while you were at Drexel. And I mean, maybe you could just talk a little bit about the program too, because I don't know how familiar people are with it in general. And then your experience, what do you still think about from your REU experience?
Yeah, that was a while ago. But yeah, so the REU program is a research experience for undergraduates. The one at Drexel, back when I was doing it, it's open to students from across the country, and you can apply, and you're provided stipend and housing and a lot of learning opportunities beyond just the research, learning about graduate school, learning about how to write a paper, how to write, put some budgets and things like this together. So there's a lot that you learn about, just, beyond the research that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So it's a great program. And that's how I got involved in research, really. I was kind of interested in trying out research. Like I said, I'd worked a couple of co-op jobs that were in, industry, and I was like, oh, let me give research a try. And so it really kind of set the stage for me ending up wanting to go to grad school and end up where I am today. I had some really awesome advisors during that program. And I think one of the things I always think about is from that program is we ended up, writing a couple conference papers. My advisors at the time wrote an NSF proposal for a planning grant or something along those lines. But I got to then, a couple months later, after the program ended, go to Cambridge University in the UK for a meeting. Kenichi Soga was there at the time. And so we had a meeting where we were presenting our research and, got to kind of experience Cambridge, which is a really neat place. And I often think, I don't know if you've ever heard of punting, but punting is kind of like gondola, right? Boats. And so it's big in Cambridge, and they do it on the River Cam. But it was February when we went, and it had just snowed. But I talked everyone that was on the team into going punting, and so people were not too pleased because it was freezing, and we ended up getting wet. And so I think about sometimes going back to that experience of kind of making everyone go punting in the middle of winter. In Cambridge, but there's obviously a lot of great research and things that came from that program. But it's a little Cambridge story that ended up coming from it too.
But I think that's important, right? Because especially the things that you do when you're an undergrad, like there are definitely things I look back on, opportunities that I feel like maybe I didn't even know about. And I'm like, oh, that's because I wasn't paying attention. I was off doing this other thing that now is incredibly unimportant. So when you went to Cambridge, I mean, the fact that you have these memories, like, I don't know. I feel there's just a way you're supposed to feel, I think, when you go to Cambridge or Oxford or something like that as an adult. And I don't know that you have any of that baggage when you go there when you were still a kid. Like, I mean, what was your first impression of it? Do you remember that?
I think just, it was to me, it was so interesting how the university was just like intertwined within the town, and it was just such a neat atmosphere. And I mean, obviously all the old architecture is really neat. But yeah, I think just like that city, like how it was a city and the university was within the city and kind of intertwined so nicely, I think was just really cool. But also, like, you see some of the names of people that are there, right? And it's kind of wild.
and that people there were doing that 400 years, 500 years before the United States even existed. Like, I think that's the other one that's always a little wild for me. Wow, that's really good. I like that. So we have one final question, and it's a biggie, but it's got to be at the end. Right before we recorded today, I asked you, and you accepted, and I'm thrilled about that, to be on the GI program committee for ASCE 2027. If people haven't been paying attention, in 2027, all the ASCE institutes are going to come together to hold one massive conference in Philadelphia. So Geo Congress will be there, and Structures Congress will be there, and the Transportation and Development Institute Congress will be there, and on and on and on. Jonathan, we're thrilled to have you on the program committee, number one. But number two, what most excites or intrigues you about this concept about ASCE 2027?
All right. Yeah, well, I'm happy to be involved with it. I'll do two things. First, it's in Philly. That's a great thing. I think Philly is a great place to have a conference, it being my hometown, but it is, I think, the third year in a row. It was just voted the most walkable city in the U.S. Depends on, I think, the publication you look at, but they'll tout whatever one they can. But yeah, so it's a great place to have a conference in that there's so many places you can just walk to right downtown, restaurants. If you want to go for a morning run or a morning walk along the Schuylkill Trail, see Boathouse Row, it's all right there. So I think it's a great place just to visit and have a conference. There's the historical stuff. So that would be one side, and then the other side is obviously bringing all the institutes together. I'm excited to kind of see how that comes together and how there's different sessions that are, I'm sure, going to have multiple institutes involved and kind of the synergistic opportunities there.
Perfect. And of course, there's going to be a lot of that. We would not be doing that. I mean, we will be right after your own heart with coastal things, I'm sure, that we'll be sharing with
Perfect.
the Coast, Oceans, Ports, and Rivers Institute, the Environment and Water Resources Institute. We work very closely with those members already on things like this, and this is going to be a great way to see it manifest into an event. So we're really excited about that. Be Philadelphia, March 1st through 5th in 2027. Yes, GeoCongress will be a part of that year. And the call for abstracts will be opening mid-October is the plan right now. So you want to be on the lookout for that. We'll have a link to the conference website down in the show notes below where you're watching this now, and just keep looking for more information about ASCE 2027. Jonathan, you made it through all the questions. Everybody always does, but it's still an accomplishment. And you did a great job, the follow-ups, and we learned a lot. And if you're driving around someday and you see a Pennsylvania license plate, viewers, that says Wooder on it, I guess there's a chance it could be Jonathan. Maybe honk and wave, and you'll still be friendly, right? So for our viewers, if you liked what you saw, and you probably did because you're here at the end, click like, subscribe, and get notifications. And yes, we will let you know every time we post something to the YouTube channel. And this, of course, brings to a close the Director's Cut Labor Day Extravaganza, 4 episodes in 4 days. We'll be back, of course, next Wednesday with our regular show at the regular time. You can look for that. Still really good guests and really good questions, though. I can guarantee you that. So, Jonathan, thank you so much for doing this. I hope it was fun.
Oh, it was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me, Brad.
And thanks for putting those national championship things up there for this St. Joe's grad. I really appreciate that. Although I've been told by many it's not a rivalry anymore. So I also really appreciate that. And again, for our viewers, we will see you next week with a brand new episode of Director's Cut.
I was going to say, I was a campus tour guide at Drexel, and I worked for the admissions office. So we started and ended every tour there. And there was like a statue where you would rub the toe as you luck on exams or something. Yeah. But yeah.
So what's the craziest thing that happened to you while you were giving a tour? Because I was not the most studious individual. And I used to disrupt the tours if I could.
Yeah,
feel a little bit of shame in that now.
Is this portion on the video that's going in?
It might end up there. This might be a bonus at the end.
So I would say the craziest thing that happened on a tour was I don't know if this was around when you were in Philly, but they had the Erin Express which was a large bar crawl where they bust people between like all the bars in the city around St. Patrick's Day, one of the weekends. And Drexel, I think they scheduled like Accepted Students Day or an open house for the same weekend. And so I was like walking down Market Street, and they had the like yellow school buses that were transporting everyone between all the bars. And my tour, we got mooned by someone on the bus. And I think we all just kind of had a good laugh, and